Elizabeth's heart pounded as she stared at her reflection in the old vanity mirror. The wedding dress her father had purchased felt more like a burial shroud than a symbol of new beginnings. In 3 hours, she would be Mrs. Theodore Blackwell, wife to the richest cattle baron in Oro Blanco, Arizona Territory. 1885, a man 30 years her senior with a reputation that made even the hardest cowboys look away when his name was mentioned. "Darling, are you nearly ready for Mrs. Patterson to help with your hair?" Her mother's voice drifted through the door, strained with forced cheerfulness. "Just a moment, Mother." Elizabeth smoothed the ivory satin of her gown, wondering how her life had come to this. Her father's failing ranch, the mounting debts, and Theodore Blackwell's convenient offer to merge their interests through marriage. She was simply another business transaction. The window beside her stood slightly ajar, the warm May breeze carrying the scent of desert sage. Beyond her family's modest ranch house lay miles of rugged country, and somewhere beyond that, freedom. But where could she go? A 20-year-old woman alone in the territories might as well paint a target on her back. A soft whistle from outside startled her from her thoughts. Elizabeth moved to the window, peering down to see a figure in the shadows of the cottonwood tree. "Daisy Anderson." A familiar, deep voice called up quietly. "It's me, Cole." Her breath caught in her throat. "Cole Davidson, the foreman from the neighboring Circle D ranch." The man whose blue eyes had followed her at every town gathering for the past year. The man whose smile made her forget her own name sometimes. "Cole," she whispered, leaning out. "What are you doing here?" He stepped into view, his tall frame dressed not in his usual work clothes but in a clean shirt and his best pair of trousers. His dark hair was combed back, though a stubborn lock fell across his forehead. "I heard about the wedding," he said, his voice tight. I couldn't let it happen without." He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. "The arranged marriage is set for this evening, but we can leave right now." Daisy's hand flew to her throat. "Leave? But where would we go?" "My father would—" "I've been saving," Cole interrupted. "Got enough to get us to California. My cousin has land there. We could start fresh." His eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. "I know it's asking a lot, but I couldn't stand by and watch you marry that man." A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Daisy's mother would be checking on her any minute. "Meet me at Willow Creek in 30 minutes, she whispered urgently. "The bend where we used to fish." "I'll be waiting," he promised, disappearing into the shadows. Daisy turned from the window, heart hammering against her ribs. Could she do this? Abandon her family, shame them before the entire town. But the alternative, a lifetime with Theodore Blackwell, made her stomach turn. Her bedroom door opened and her mother entered, carrying a box of hairpins. "Elizabeth, we really must hurry. Mrs. Patterson is waiting in the parlor, and your father is already entertaining Mr. Blackwell downstairs." "He's here already." Daisy's voice rose in panic. Her mother mistook her fear for bridal nerves. Now, just breathe deeply. Every bride feels this way. You'll settle into it." She began unpinning Daisy's dark hair from its loose arrangement. "This union will save us all, Daisy. Your father hasn't told you the worst of it, but Mr. Blackwell holds the notes on almost everything we own." Daisy's resolve hardened. Her parents had made their choices. She would make hers. "Mother, could you fetch my blue ribbons from the chest in the attic? The ones grandmother gave me. I'd like to have something of hers with me today." Her mother smiled. "What a lovely thought. I'll get them right away." The moment her mother left, Daisy sprang into action. She changed into a simple day dress and sturdy boots, stuffing a small bundle of necessities into a cloth sack. Her hands trembled as she pinned her hair up under a plain bonnet. The wedding dress lay abandoned on the bed, a glimmering reminder of what she was rejecting. She scribbled a hasty note. "Forgive me. I cannot marry him. Please don't look for me." Placing it on her pillow, she slipped out through the window and down the trellis that had supported her escape since childhood. Her foot slipped on the weathered wood, nearly sending her tumbling, but she caught herself with practiced ease. Once on the ground, Daisy kept to the shadows of the garden, ducking behind her mother's prized rose bushes when a ranch hand passed by. Her family's property bordered national forest land to the east, and Willow Creek cut through both. If she could reach the tree line without being spotted, she'd have a straight shot to the meeting place. Her luck held until she reached the edge of the cleared land. As she prepared to make her final dash to the trees, a deep voice stopped her cold. "Going somewhere, Miss Anderson?" Theodore Blackwell stood blocking her path, smoking a cigar, his heavy gold watch chain glinting in the afternoon sun. His eyes, cold as January frost, assessed her plain traveling clothes and the bag clutched in her white-knuckled hand. "Mr. Blackwell," she stammered, mind racing for a plausible excuse. "I've made quite an investment in you, young lady," he said, flicking ash from his cigar. "Purchased your father's debts at considerable expense, and now it appears you're attempting to renege on our arrangement." "It wasn't my arrangement," Daisy said, finding her courage. "I never agreed to marry you." Blackwell's thin lips curved in what might charitably be called a smile. "Your consent was never a factor in the negotiations. Your father and I reached an understanding as gentlemen." He stepped closer, and Daisy fought the urge to back away. "I've been patient. I've overlooked your youth and your reluctance, but my patience has limits." "I won't marry you," Daisy said firmly, though her voice quavered. "Not today. Not ever." "You ungrateful little—" His hand shot out, gripping her arm with bruising force. "Do you know how many young women would give anything to be in your position, to have the protection of my name and fortune?" "Let her go." Cole's voice, hard as iron, cut through the tension. Both Daisy and Blackwell turned to see Cole Davidson standing at the edge of the trees, his stance wide and ready, hand hovering near the revolver at his hip. Blackwell laughed, a sound devoid of mirth. "The ranch foreman." "I might have known." He didn't release Daisy's arm. "This doesn't concern you, boy. Go back to your horses." "I said let her go." Cole stepped forward, and there was something in his eyes that made even Blackwell pause. "You're throwing away everything for this. Cowpuncher." Blackwell asked Daisy, incredulous. "Do you think he can give you the life you deserve, the security your family needs?" "He can give me the only thing that matters," Daisy replied, wrenching her arm free. "A choice." Blackwell's face darkened. "Your father will hear about this." "When I'm done, Davidson won't find work within 500 miles of Arizona territory." "We won't be in Arizona territory," Cole said evenly. "And if you try to follow us or harm her family, I'll make sure everyone from here to San Francisco knows exactly how Theodore Blackwell conducts his business dealings." Something passed between the men, an understanding of sorts, and Blackwell took a step back. "Have it your way, then. The Anderson Ranch will be mine by sundown tomorrow, once your father defaults on his loans." He turned his cold gaze on Daisy. "I hope he thinks your virtue was worth his legacy." "My father sold me to pay his debts," Daisy said quietly. "What legacy is that?" Blackwell sneered, but made no move to stop them as Cole came forward to take Daisy's hand. They backed away slowly, never turning their backs on the older man until they reached the safety of the tree line. "We need to hurry," Cole said once they were among the pines. "I've got horses waiting at the creek." Daisy nodded, fighting back tears as the enormity of what she'd just done crashed over her. She'd abandoned her family, defied the most powerful man in the county, and thrown her lot in with a cowboy who had little more than his good name and strong hands. Yet as they hurried through the dappled forest light, Cole's steady presence beside her felt more right than anything had in months. Her mother would be looking for her by now, discovering the empty room, the discarded wedding dress. The thought brought a pang of guilt, but not regret. "Are you sure about this?" Cole asked as they neared the creek, the sound of running water growing louder. "It's not too late to go back." Daisy squeezed his hand. "I've never been more sure of anything." At the creek bend, two saddled horses waited, tethered to a low branch. Cole had packed saddlebags with supplies, food, a canteen of water, a small tent, everything they would need for the journey ahead. "We'll ride west," he said, helping her mount the smaller of the two horses, a dun mare with gentle eyes. "Stay off the main roads until we're well away from Oro Blanco. I know these back trails better than most." "Won't they come after us?" Daisy asked, adjusting her skirts over the saddle. Cole swung up onto his own mount, a sturdy black gelding. "Your father might once his pride's wounded enough. Blackwell will be too busy foreclosing on your family's ranch to bother with a chase." His jaw tightened. "I'm sorry about that, Daisy. I wish there was a way to save them too." "They made their choice," Daisy said, though the words hurt. "Just as I've made mine." Cole nodded, understanding in his eyes. "We'll ride until sunset, then make camp. Tomorrow we'll reach the territorial line and be that much closer to California." As they urged their horses forward, crossing the shallow creek and heading into the rugged country beyond, Daisy cast one last look in the direction of her family's ranch, the only home she'd ever known. Then she turned her face westward, toward whatever future awaited with the man riding steadily beside her. The late afternoon sun beat down on them as they followed game trails and old indigenous paths through the scrubland. Cole led the way, occasionally pointing out landmarks or offering a sip from his canteen. They spoke little, both aware that Blackwell might have rallied men to search for them despite his seeming acquiescence. After 2 hours of hard riding, they topped a rise that gave them a view back toward Oro Blanco. In the distance, the town's buildings shimmered in the heat, tiny and toy-like from this height. "By now they'll know you're gone," Cole said, pulling his horse to a stop beside hers. "How are you holding up?" Daisy's legs ached from the unaccustomed hours in the saddle, and her face felt tight from sun and wind. But looking at Cole, his concerned eyes, the strong line of his jaw, the gentleness with which he treated her, she found herself smiling. "I'm scared," she admitted. "But not of this. I'm scared of what would have happened if you hadn't come for me today." Cole's expression softened. He reached across the space between their horses to take her hand. "I almost didn't," he confessed. "I told myself it wasn't my place. That you'd made your peace with marrying Blackwell." His thumb traced small circles on her palm. "Then last night at the saloon, I overheard some things about how he treated his last wife before she died, and I knew I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try." The intimacy of his touch, so simple yet so profound, made Daisy's breath catch. "What did you hear?" she asked. Cole shook his head. "Nothing you need to carry, just know that what we're doing, as crazy as it seems, is right." He released her hand reluctantly. "We should keep moving. There's a sheltered hollow about an hour ahead where we can make camp for the night." They continued westward as the sun began its descent, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. The terrain grew rougher, dotted with mesquite and kala cactus. Twice Cole dismounted to check for signs they were being followed, but each time he returned to his saddle satisfied they'd left no obvious trail. Just as dusk was settling over the land, they reached the hollow Cole had mentioned, a natural depression protected by a semicircle of boulders, with enough scrubby grass nearby for the horses to graze. A tiny spring seeped from between two rocks, providing a precious trickle of water. "It's not much," Cole said apologetically as he helped Daisy dismount, his hands steady at her waist. "But it'll keep us hidden for the night." Daisy's legs nearly buckled as her feet touched ground, and Cole caught her against his chest. For a moment they stood frozen, her face tilted up to his arms around her. Then, conscious of her inexperience and the propriety they'd already shattered, Cole gently set her on her feet. "Rest," he said. "I'll take care of the horses and get a small fire going." Daisy nodded, grateful for the moment to collect herself. She found a relatively flat spot and sank down, massaging her sore legs. Watching Cole work unsaddling the horses, rubbing them down, setting up a small camp with practiced efficiency, she was struck by how much she trusted this man she really knew so little about. "Cole," she called softly, "tell me about your cousin in California, and the land you mentioned." Cole smiled as he arranged kindling for the fire. "His name's Ethan Davidson. He homesteaded near a place called Sonoma 5 years back. Good farmland, not too far from San Francisco." The kindling caught, and he fed the tiny flame carefully. "He's been writing, asking me to join him. Says there's a parcel adjoining his that's still unclaimed. Good water rights, fertile soil. And you've been saving for it all this time." "For something," Cole admitted. "Wasn't sure what until recently." The fire now established, he moved to the saddlebags and withdrew a package wrapped in cloth. "Hope you don't mind simple fare. Jerky, hardtack, and a few apples I grabbed from the ranch kitchen." They ate side by side in the growing darkness, the small fire casting dancing shadows on the rocks around them. The night was cool but not cold, typical for late spring in the high desert. Above them, stars began to appear, brilliant against the indigo sky. "Did you always work for the Circle D?" Daisy asked between bites of dried beef. Cole shook his head. "Came west from Missouri after the war. My pa died at Vicksburg and there wasn't much left for us after. Ma passed 2 winters later." His voice held old pain, long scarred over. "Worked my way across Texas, New Mexico territory, finally landed in Arizona 6 years ago. Started as a hand at the Circle D, worked up to foreman last year." "I remember when you came to town," Daisy said, smiling at the memory. "You bought ribbon candy for all the children at the general store that Christmas." Cole looked surprised. "You remember that? I noticed you," Daisy admitted, feeling heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the fire. Even then, Cole's expression grew serious. "Daisy, I need to say something. What we're doing running away together, in most people's eyes, it compromises your virtue, your reputation. I think I did that when I climbed out my window in my traveling dress," Daisy said wryly. "What I mean is," Cole continued, "I intend to do right by you. When we reach California, if you'll have me, I'd like us to marry." He looked down at his calloused hands. "I know I'm not the kind of husband your parents wanted for you. I can't offer wealth or position, but I swear I'll work every day to give you a good life." Daisy reached out, covering his hand with hers. "Cole Davidson, are you proposing to me?" He met her eyes, the firelight reflecting in his blue gaze. "Suppose I am, though I always imagined doing it somewhere finer than a hollow in the desert with jerky for supper." "I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be," Daisy said softly. Cole hesitated, then leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, he pressed his lips to hers in a kiss so gentle it brought tears to her eyes. His hand came up to cradle her cheek, and she leaned into his touch, feeling a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the fire beside them. When they parted, Cole rested his forehead against hers for a moment. "We should get some sleep," he said finally. "Dawn comes early, and we've got hard riding ahead." He set up the small tent for Daisy and laid out his bedroll near the fire. As she settled into the cramped shelter, listening to the night sounds of the desert and Cole's quiet movements as he checked on the horses one last time, Daisy felt a strange peace descend. Whatever hardships lay ahead, whatever dangers pursued them, she had chosen this path freely. For perhaps the first time in her life, her future belonged to her. The next morning dawned clear and cool. They broke camp efficiently, Cole teaching Daisy how to pack the saddlebags properly and secure them to her mount. They ate a quick breakfast of hardtack and the remaining apples, then doused the fire and scattered the ashes. "We'll follow this arroyo west for about 10 miles, Cole explained as they mounted up. Then cut northwest toward the territorial border. If we push hard, we can reach a way station by nightfall where we can get fresh supplies." Daisy nodded, adjusting her bonnet against the already strengthening sun. "Do you think they're looking for us?" Cole's expression grew serious. "Your father, maybe. Blackwell's likely already at the bank, foreclosing on your family's property." He hesitated. "Daisy, if you have second thoughts, if you want to go back and try to help your family, I'll understand." She shook her head firmly. "My father made his choices. I've made mine." They rode steadily through the morning, the terrain gradually changing as they moved westward. The sparse vegetation of the high desert gave way to more abundant growth palo verde trees with their green bark, ironwood, and the occasional saguaro standing sentinel against the horizon. Around midday, they stopped in the shade of a rocky outcropping to rest the horses and eat some of the jerky. Cole was checking his gelding's foreleg, concerned about a slight hitch in its gait when he suddenly went still. "Don't move," he said quietly to Daisy. "Someone's coming." Daisy froze, straining her ears. After a moment, she heard what Cole had detected, the distant sound of hoofbeats, moving fast and heading their way. "Get behind the rocks," Cole ordered, drawing his revolver and checking that it was loaded. "If anything happens to me, take my horse and keep heading west. Follow the sun until you reach the Sonoran Road, then turn north. Ask for Ethan Davidson in Sonoma." "I'm not leaving you," Daisy protested, but moved behind the outcropping as directed. Cole positioned himself between the approaching riders and Daisy, his stance deceptively relaxed but his hand never far from his weapon. The hoofbeats grew louder and dust rose on the horizon to the east. "2 riders," Cole muttered. "Moving fast." Daisy's heart hammered in her chest. Had Blackwell sent men after them after all? Or was it her father, coming to drag her back to fulfill her obligation? The riders crested a small rise about 100 yards away, then slowed as they spotted Cole. As they approached, Daisy could make out their features, a young man and woman, both astride lathered horses that had clearly been pushed hard. "That's Caleb Johnson," Cole said with surprise. "Hand from the Circle D, and the woman with him is Rachel, the cook's daughter." The pair drew their exhausted horses to a halt about 20 feet from Cole. "Davidson," Caleb called, raising a hand in greeting. "Thought we might catch you two out this way." "Johnson," Cole acknowledged cautiously. "You're a long way from the ranch." Caleb dismounted, his expression grim. "We're running too, Rachel and me. Blackwell's men came to the Circle D at dawn, said the boss had sold the ranch to him, started throwing their weight around right away." His jaw tightened. "One of them got rough with Rachel. I intervened. It didn't end well for him. You killed him." Cole asked sharply. "No," Rachel spoke up, still mounted on her heaving horse. "But Caleb broke his jaw. They were talking about a hanging when we slipped away." Daisy emerged from behind the rocks, unable to stay hidden. "Mr. Blackwell bought the Circle D, but how?" "Seems our boss had gambling debts," Caleb explained. "Been losing heavy at the tables in Tucson for months. Blackwell held his markers." He glanced between Cole and Daisy. Word at the ranch was that you two ran off to avoid Miss Anderson's wedding to the old vulture. Figured you'd be heading west." Cole's stance relaxed slightly, but wariness remained in his eyes. "What do you want from us, Johnson?" "Safety in numbers," Caleb said simply. "Blackwell's got men watching the main routes west, but you know this country better than most. Thought maybe we could travel together, at least until we're out of his reach." Cole and Daisy exchanged looks. Adding 2 more people to their flight would slow them down, but having additional guns might prove useful if they encountered trouble. "How do we know we can trust you?" Daisy asked. Rachel slid from her saddle, legs trembling with fatigue. "Miss Anderson, I've served you tea in town more times than I can count. My mother's cooked for your family at Christmas these past 3 years. We're not spies for Blackwell." Caleb nodded agreement. "We just want what you want. A fresh start somewhere Blackwell can't touch us." After a moment's consideration, Cole nodded. "We'll travel together at least to the territorial border, but your horses need rest before we go any further." He turned to Daisy. "What do you think?" The fact that he asked her opinion, treated her as an equal partner in the decision, warmed her. "I think Miss Johnson could use some water and shade before we continue," she said. "And perhaps we should learn what else has happened in Oro Blanco since we left." They led the horses deeper into the shade and shared their meager water supplies. Once settled, Caleb filled them in on the events that had transpired after their flight. "All hell broke loose when they found your room empty," he told Daisy. "Your mother took to her bed with the vapors. Your father and Blackwell had a shouting match that could be heard clean across town. By nightfall, Blackwell was calling in all your father's debts, saying the wedding had been part of the terms. And this morning," Cole prompted. "This morning Blackwell rode out to the Circle D with 6 men, all armed, and a bill of sale for the ranch," Caleb said grimly. "Said he'd be taking possession immediately. When the boss protested, Blackwell had 2 of his men hold him while he read out gambling IOUs totaling more than the ranch was worth." "Where was I during all this?" Cole asked. "Nobody knew," Rachel said. "The boss said you'd taken personal time yesterday afternoon. When you didn't show for breakfast, folks figured you'd heard about the sale somehow and cleared out." Cole's expression darkened. "I would never abandon my post without proper notice. Not unless," he glanced at Daisy, not finishing the thought. "Not unless someone needed you more," she completed softly. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. "We should move on," Cole finally said. "The horses have had enough rest. If we keep to the arroyos and dry washes, we can avoid leaving an obvious trail." They traveled through the afternoon, making slower progress with the addition of Caleb and Rachel's tired mounts. The landscape grew increasingly rugged, with steep walled canyons and thorny undergrowth that tore at their clothing. But Cole navigated confidently, occasionally consulting a battered compass he kept in his vest pocket. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, they came upon a small spring nestled among a stand of cottonwoods. The unexpected greenery was a welcome sight after miles of dust and rock. "We'll camp here," Cole decided. "The trees will hide our fire, and the horses need water." They set about making camp with the practiced efficiency of people accustomed to hard work. Caleb saw to the horses while Rachel and Daisy gathered firewood. Cole disappeared briefly, returning with 2 desert hares he'd shot, which Rachel expertly skinned and prepared for cooking. As they sat around the small fire later, stomachs fuller than they'd been since leaving Oro Blanco, a sense of cautious companionship developed between the 4 fugitives. Caleb, it emerged, had been sweet on Rachel for over a year but lacked the means to court her properly. Their flight together had been as much about seizing an opportunity for a future together as escaping Blackwell's retribution. "What will you do once we reach California?" Daisy asked them as the fire burned low. Caleb and Rachel exchanged glances. "My uncle works the docks in San Francisco," Caleb said. "Wrote me last year that they're always looking for strong backs. Figured I'd start there, save enough to get a place of our own eventually." "We plan to marry as soon as possible," Rachel added, a blush visible even in the firelight. "If we can find a preacher who doesn't ask too many questions." "You could come with us to Sonoma," Cole offered. "My cousin's land is good. He might need help working it." The conversation continued, plans and dreams shared in hushed voices under the vast desert sky. When it came time to sleep, they divided the watches, with Cole taking the first shift. Daisy lay in the small tent, listening to the night sounds and Cole's occasional movement as he tended the fire or checked the perimeter. Despite the danger of their situation, a strange happiness had taken root in her heart. Here, sleeping on hard ground with nothing but a thin blanket between her and the desert sand, she felt more alive than she ever had in her father's house. The next morning they broke camp at first light and continued westward. The terrain grew even more difficult as they entered a region of broken badlands, eroded hills, and deep gullies that forced them to backtrack frequently. By midday, the horses were struggling, and the humans weren't faring much better under the punishing sun. "There's a line shack about 2 miles ahead," Cole told them during a brief rest. "Used by cowboys running herds through this stretch. Should have some basic supplies, maybe even grain for the horses." The promise of shelter spurred them onward. When the small wooden structure came into view, nestled against a hillside with a windmill creaking slowly above a stock tank, it seemed like a mirage. But as they approached, Cole held up a hand, signaling for them to stop. "Something's not right," he said quietly. "There's smoke coming from the chimney." They dismounted, tethering the horses in a small grove of mesquite trees. Cole drew his revolver and Caleb produced a hunting knife from his boot. "Stay with the horses," Cole told the women. "If you hear shooting, ride west and don't look back." "I'm coming with you," Daisy said firmly. "We're safer together." Before Cole could protest, the door of the line shack swung open. A figure emerged, a tall man with a rifle cradled in his arms. "That's far enough," he called. "State your business." "We're just passing through," Cole replied, keeping his gun at his side but ready. "Looking for shelter and water." The man stepped further into the light, revealing a weathered face beneath a shock of silver hair. "Cole Davidson, that you boy?" Cole's tense posture relaxed slightly. "Mr. Harding?" "Tom Harding." The old man lowered his rifle, a smile creasing his leathery features. "Well, I'll be damned. Haven't seen you since that cattle drive to Denver 3 years back." His keen eyes took in their dusty, trail-worn appearance and the 2 women standing behind the men. "Looks like you folks might be in some trouble." "You could say that," Cole admitted. "We're heading west, quickly." Harding nodded, asking no further questions. "Well, come on then. Got a pot of beans on the stove and coffee that'll put hair on your chest." He winked at Daisy and Rachel. "Begging your pardon, ladies." The interior of the line shack was spare but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a cooking pot bubbling over the flames. Rough wooden bunks lined another wall, and a scarred table with mismatched chairs occupied the center of the single room. "Make yourselves comfortable," Harding said, gesturing to the table. "Water's fresh from the well out back." As they settled in, gratefully accepting bowls of beans and cups of strong black coffee, Harding remained standing, looking out the single window toward the east. "Expecting company, Mr. Harding?" Cole asked, noting the old man's vigilance. Harding turned, his expression grave. "Might be. Ran into some rough sorts yesterday about 10 miles east of here. Looking for two couples heading west, a tall cowboy with a pretty dark-haired girl and a ranch hand with a redhead. His eyes moved meaningfully between the four of them. Offering $100 for information leading to your capture. A heavy silence fell over the room. Theodore Blackwell's men, Daisy asked quietly. Harding nodded. Said they were representing Mr. Blackwell's interests. 5 of them, well-armed, mean-looking bunch. He stroked his silver beard thoughtfully. Told them I hadn't seen hide nor hair of anyone fitting that description. They didn't much like my answer, but they moved on. Which way were they headed? Caleb asked. Southwest, toward the territorial border crossing at Yuma, Harding replied. Reckon they figure that's where you'd be aiming for. Cole exchanged looks with Daisy. We were planning to cross near Ehrenberg further north. Smart, Harding approved. Less traveled, but they'll have men watching all the likely crossing points. He moved to a small chest in the corner and withdrew a folded map, spreading it on the table. Here's where we are, he said, pointing to a spot in the western Arizona territory. Ehrenberg's here, about 2 days' hard ride, but there's another way. His weathered finger traced a route through a tangle of canyons and hills. Apache Pass. It's rough country, barely a trail in places, but it'll bring you out in California territory well north of any place Blackwell's men are likely to be watching. The Apaches? Rachel asked nervously. Are they still active in that area? Harding shook his head. Most are on the reservation these days. You might encounter a hunting party, but they generally leave peaceful travelers alone. He looked at Cole. It's a hard road, son. Not for the faint-hearted, but it might be your best chance. Cole studied the map intently, tracing the route with his finger. How long? 3, maybe 4 days to reach California soil, Harding estimated, depending on how hard you push and how much water you can carry. There are springs marked here and here, he pointed, but they might be dry this time of year. Daisy laid her hand on Cole's arm. If it's our best chance, we should take it. Cole covered her hand with his own, the gesture intimate despite their audience. It'll be rough going, especially for you and Rachel. We're tougher than we look, Rachel said firmly, and I'd rather face 100 miles of rough country than a hangman's noose or Mr. Blackwell's idea of justice. Caleb nodded agreement. Apache Pass it is. Harding insisted they rest through the afternoon and night, regaining their strength for the difficult journey ahead. He shared his own supplies generously: jerky, hardtack, coffee, and even precious sugar. More importantly, he filled their canteens and provided 2 extra water skins. Desert's no place to be caught short of water, he said gravely. Especially where you're headed. That night, with Caleb and Rachel occupying one corner of the shack and Harding snoring softly in his bunk, Cole and Daisy stepped outside to enjoy a moment of privacy beneath the stars. Are you having regrets? Cole asked quietly as they stood shoulder to shoulder, gazing at the brilliant sweep of the Milky Way overhead. Daisy considered the question seriously. 2 days ago, she had been preparing to marry a man she feared. Now she was a fugitive, sleeping rough, facing an uncertain future with a man she was only beginning to know. Yet despite the danger, despite the hardship, she felt more alive than she ever had. No regrets, she said finally, turning to face him. But I am afraid. Cole's hand found hers in the darkness. Of what? Of failing. Of not being strong enough for this journey, of being a burden to you. She squeezed his fingers. I've lived such a sheltered life, Cole. What do I know of survival in wild country, of building a life from nothing? In the moonlight, she could see his smile, gentle, reassuring. You climbed out a window rather than marry a man you didn't love. You've ridden hard for 2 days without a word of complaint. You faced down Theodore Blackwell himself. His free hand came up to touch her cheek lightly. I'd say you're already stronger than most. Daisy leaned into his touch. When we reach California, she said softly, I want us to marry right away, not just for propriety's sake, but because. She hesitated, then finished in a rush. Because I'm falling in love with you, Cole Davidson. For a moment, Cole went very still. Then he pulled her gently to him, one arm encircling her waist while his other hand cradled the back of her head. Daisy Anderson, he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. I've been in love with you since the first time I saw you at the Founders' Day dance, laughing with your friends in that blue dress with ribbons in your hair. He kissed her then, beneath the vast desert sky, a kiss that held promises of all that might be if they could just survive the journey ahead. Daisy's arms went around his neck, returning his embrace with a passion that surprised them both. When they finally parted, breathless and a little stunned by the intensity of their feelings, Cole rested his forehead against hers. We should get some sleep, he said reluctantly. Dawn will come early and we've got hard riding ahead. Daisy nodded but made no move to release him. Just hold me a moment longer, she whispered. They stood embraced in the silver moonlight, two souls finding each other against all odds in the vast wilderness of the Arizona Territory. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together. At first light, they bid farewell to Tom Harding, who provided them with final advice about the route ahead, and a small pouch of salt worth its weight in gold in the desert. Keep the morning sun on your right shoulder until midday, he instructed as they mounted up. Then look for the twin peaks that look like a lady's bosom begging your pardon, ladies. The pass runs between them. There's an old miner's cabin at the base you can shelter in tomorrow night. He shook hands with Cole and Caleb, then surprised Daisy by taking her hand and pressing a small object into it. My late wife's wedding band, he said quietly. Carried it with me these 20 years since she passed. Seems like it ought to be on a living woman's hand now. Daisy blinked back tears at the unexpected gift. Mr. Harding, I couldn't possibly— You can and you will, he interrupted gruffly. Consider it my blessing on your union. His weathered face softened. She'd have liked you, my Ellen, had the same kind of fire in her eyes. With final thanks and promises to repay his kindness someday, they set off toward the distant hills that marked the beginning of Apache Pass. The terrain grew increasingly challenging as the morning progressed. Steep arroyos, loose shale slopes, and patches of dense brush that had to be carefully navigated. By midday, the Twin Peaks Harding had described came into view, stark against the western horizon. Between them lay a dark cleft the pass that would lead them to California, and they hoped, freedom from Theodore Blackwell's reach. We'll rest here while the sun's highest, Cole decided as they reached a small plateau offering meager shade from a cluster of stunted junipers. Give the horses a chance to recover before we tackle that slope. They dismounted gratefully, stretching sore muscles and sharing carefully rationed sips of water. The heat was oppressive, the air so dry it seemed to pull moisture from their very skin. How much farther to the miner's cabin? Rachel asked, wiping sweat from her brow. According to Harding's map, it's just this side of the pass, Cole replied, consulting the dog-eared paper. Maybe 3 more hours if the trail's passable. Daisy sat beside him, her skirts spread around her in the dust. Despite the harsh conditions, her spirit remained undaunted. Tell me more about Sonoma, she requested. What's it like where we're going? Cole's face lightened as he described the green valley his cousin had written about: rich soil, abundant water, gentle climate. Ethan says the hills turn golden in summer but stay green near the creek year-round. There are orchards there, vineyards too. It sounds beautiful, Daisy said dreamily. I've never seen an ocean. The Pacific's less than a day's ride from Sonoma, Cole told her. We'll go as soon as we're settled. Caleb, who had been keeping watch from a higher point on the plateau, suddenly dropped to a crouch. Riders, he hissed, coming up the trail behind us. They froze, then scrambled for cover, leading the horses into the densest part of the juniper thicket. Cole pulled out his small field glass and carefully surveyed the back trail. 3 men, he reported grimly. Moving fast, can't make out their faces at this distance, but they're following our trail. Blackwell's men, Daisy asked, fear tightening her throat. Cole nodded. Likely. They're well mounted, all armed. He collapsed the glass and turned to the group. We can't outrun them on these trails. Their horses are fresher. We need to find a defensible position. Caleb pointed toward the pass. The miner's cabin. If we can reach it first, we'd have walls around us at least. It's our best chance, Cole agreed. Mount up, but stay low in the saddle. We'll take that dry stream bed. It might hide our tracks for a while. They set off at the fastest pace the rough terrain would allow, following a winding arroyo that cut through the badlands toward the distant pass. The horses, sensing their riders' urgency, pushed on despite their fatigue. For an hour they made good progress, the arroyo providing both cover and a relatively smooth path. But as they approached the foothills leading to the pass, the dry stream bed narrowed, forcing them to ride single file. We're leaving clear tracks now, Caleb warned from his position at the rear. They'll see exactly where we went. Cole, in the lead, nodded grimly. Can't be helped. We need to reach that cabin before they catch up to us. The landscape grew increasingly vertical as they ascended toward the pass. The arroyo gave way to a rocky trail that switchbacked up the steep slope. To their right, the land fell away in a dizzying drop. To their left, sheer rock faces offered no escape route. I can see the cabin, Cole called back after they'd climbed for another half-hour. Just ahead, in that stand of pine. Sure enough, a small stone structure came into view, nestled against the mountainside where the trail widened before entering the actual pass. It was crude but solid-looking, with a single door and 2 small windows. They urged their tired horses forward, reaching the cabin just as the sound of hoofbeats echoed up from below. Get inside, Cole ordered, helping Daisy dismount. Caleb, get the horses around back where they can't be easily shot. Daisy paused at the cabin door. What about you? I'll join you in a minute. Go. The interior of the cabin was Spartan but intact: a small stone fireplace, a rough wooden table, and what might generously be called a bed frame in one corner. Rachel immediately began moving the table to block the door, while Daisy checked the windows. There's a rifle here, she called, finding the weapon leaning in a corner. And ammunition. Cole entered a moment later, Caleb right behind him. They've spotted us, he reported tersely. 3 men, all armed, about 10 minutes behind us. You recognize any of them? Daisy asked. Cole nodded grimly. Blackwell's foreman, Wade Harris. Mean piece of work. The others I don't know, but they look like the sort Harris would run with. What's our plan? Caleb asked, checking the rifle Daisy had found. We're 4 against 3, but they have the advantage of better weapons and position, Cole said, quickly assessing their situation. This cabin has thick walls but only 1 door. If they're smart, they'll surround us and wait us out. We have water for maybe 2 days if we're careful, Daisy calculated. Food for a bit longer. They don't know that, Cole pointed out, and they'll be expecting us to try to break out toward California, not hole up here. A shot rang out, the bullet splintering the wooden window frame. Everyone ducked instinctively. That's close enough, Davidson, a harsh voice called from outside. Send out the women and Anderson's daughter, and maybe you and Johnson live to see California. Cole moved to the window, keeping to the side of the frame. Not happening, Harris. Ride back to Blackwell and tell him the deal's off. Harsh laughter floated up from the rocks below. There is no deal anymore. The old man just wants Anderson's girl brought back alive. The rest of you can feed the buzzards for all he cares. Daisy paled at the implications, but her voice was steady when she spoke. He's lying. Blackwell won't let any of us live to tell what happened. Cole nodded agreement. Harris never was one for telling the truth. He peered carefully around the window frame, trying to locate their attackers. They've split up. One's working his way around to the back. Caleb moved to the rear window. I see him, keeping to the rocks about 50 yards out. Another shot hit the cabin, this one splintering the door. We need to even the odds, Cole said grimly. He turned to Caleb. Think you can hit that one from here? Caleb raised the rifle, sighting along the barrel. Maybe, if he breaks cover. As if on cue, the man made a dash between two boulders. Caleb fired, the shot echoing off the surrounding hills. The man stumbled, then fell, not rising again. Got him, Caleb said, his voice tight. Two left, Cole muttered. He checked his revolver, then looked at Daisy. Stay low, away from the windows. For the next hour, an uneasy stalemate developed. Occasional shots from Harris, and his remaining man kept them pinned in the cabin, while Caleb and Cole returned fire when they could, trying to conserve their limited ammunition. As the sun began to sink toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across the mountainside, Harris called out again. Getting dark soon, Davidson. Nights get cold up here. We've got blankets, food, plenty of ammunition. How long you think you can hold out? Cole didn't respond, instead gathering the others close for a whispered conference. He's right about one thing: we can't stay here indefinitely, he admitted. Sooner or later they'll rush us, or Blackwell will send more men. What are our options? Rachel asked, her face pale but composed. Cole thought for a moment. The pass itself is less than a mile from here. If we could get through it tonight in darkness, we'd be well on our way to California by dawn. They'll be expecting us to try the pass, Caleb pointed out. Yes, Cole agreed, but there's another way. The back window faces a steep slope that leads up, not down. If we could get the horses up that trail, we could circle around above the pass, then drop down on the western side. Daisy frowned. Is there a trail up there? Harding mentioned it, Cole said. Said it was used by smugglers during the war. Dangerous in daylight, doubly so at night, but it might be our only chance. They discussed the plan in hushed tones as the light faded. Outside, Harris and his man fell silent, likely conserving energy for the night ahead. We'll go just after full dark, Cole decided. The moon won't rise until after midnight, so we'll have a few hours of complete darkness to get up that slope and around the pass. The waiting was the hardest part. They sat in the growing darkness of the cabin, too tense to sleep but forced into inactivity. Daisy found herself pressed against Cole's side, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Are you afraid?" he whispered. She considered the question honestly. "Yes," she admitted. But not of dying, strangely enough. She found his hand in the darkness. "I'm afraid of losing this, what we've found, of never getting to see what might have been." Cole's arm tightened around her. "We'll make it," he promised, "and then we'll have a lifetime to find out what might be." Finally, the light had faded completely. Cole rose, moving silently to the back window. "It's time," he whispered. "Caleb, you go first with Rachel. Get the horses ready. We'll follow in 5 minutes." Caleb nodded, embracing the other man briefly before helping Rachel through the narrow window. They disappeared into the darkness, moving carefully up the steep slope behind the cabin. "Now we give them something to think about," Cole murmured, moving to the front window. He fired 2 shots in quick succession, then a third at the door. Answering fire came immediately, bullets thudding into the cabin walls. "They're still alert," Cole noted grimly. "Let's go while they're focused on the front." He helped Daisy through the back window, then followed her, closing the shutter behind him to hide their escape for as long as possible. The night was pitch black, the stars obscured by high clouds that had moved in after sunset. They climbed the steep slope by feel more than sight, Cole leading Daisy by the hand, occasionally whispering warnings about loose rocks or steep drops. After what seemed an eternity of breathless climbing, they reached a small plateau where Caleb and Rachel waited with the horses. "No sign they've spotted us yet," Caleb reported in a whisper. "But they've gone quiet down there. Might be suspicious." "We need to move fast," Cole decided. "Stay close, single file. I'll lead." They mounted in silence and set off along the narrow track that skirted the upper edge of the pass. The path was treacherous, barely wide enough for the horses in places, with a sheer drop to one side that disappeared into darkness. They rode slowly, the horses picking their way carefully over loose rock and around jutting boulders. They had been traveling for perhaps half an hour when a shout echoed up from below. "They're gone! Check the back!" "They've discovered our escape," Cole said grimly. "We need to move faster." But faster was nearly impossible on the treacherous trail. They continued their careful progress, straining to hear sounds of pursuit over the soft clopping of their horses' hooves on stone. An hour later, the trail began to descend, winding down the western face of the mountains. Below, they could make out the dark expanse of desert that marked the California territory, their destination, now tantalizingly close. "We're going to make it," Daisy breathed, hope surging within her. And then a rifle shot cracked the night air, the bullet whining off stone inches from Cole's head. "Down!" he shouted, pulling his horse to a halt and drawing his revolver in one fluid motion. More shots followed, coming from a ridge above them where Harris and his remaining man must have circled around. "They've cut us off," Caleb growled, pulling Rachel from her saddle and pushing her behind a boulder for protection. Cole did the same with Daisy, then took careful aim at the muzzle flashes above them. He fired twice, then ducked as answering shots peppered their position. "We're pinned," he said tersely, "and they have the high ground." "What do we do?" Daisy asked, fear making her voice tight. Cole's face was grim in the darkness. "We need to split up, give them multiple targets." He turned to Caleb. "Take the women down that draw to the right. It'll be slow going, but it should get you down to the valley floor. I'll keep them occupied here." "No," Daisy protested immediately. "I won't leave you." "Daisy," Cole said urgently, taking her face between his hands. "This is your best chance. I'll follow as soon as I can." "You're talking about sacrificing yourself," she accused, tears welling in her eyes. Another volley of shots interrupted them, closer this time. "We don't have time to argue," Cole said. "Please, Daisy, go with Caleb and Rachel. I'll find you, I promise." Before she could protest further, a new sound cut through the night, hoofbeats, many of them, approaching from the western slope below them. "More riders," Caleb warned. "We're caught between them." Cole's expression hardened. "Get ready to fight," he said, checking his ammunition. "We make our stand here." They crouched behind their meager cover, weapons ready, as the hoofbeats grew louder. From above, Harris and his man continued to fire sporadically, but their shots seemed aimed at the approaching riders now rather than Cole's group. Suddenly, a commanding voice called up from the trail below. "United States Cavalry, lay down your weapons." Relief crashed through Daisy so intensely she nearly collapsed. Cole's arm went around her, steadying her. "Up here," he shouted. "We're under fire from the ridge." Torches flared below as the cavalry patrol located them. Simultaneously, the sound of retreating horses came from the ridge where Harris had been positioned. "They're running," Caleb reported, peering carefully over their cover. Within minutes, blue-uniformed cavalrymen had secured the area. Their leader, a lieutenant with a weathered face and kind eyes, dismounted near Cole's position. "Lieutenant Michael Fletcher, Fort Yuma Cavalry Patrol," he introduced himself. "Mind telling me why you folks are having a shooting match in Apache Pass in the middle of the night?" Cole stepped forward, holstering his weapon. "Cole Davidson, sir. We're traveling to California. Those men were sent to bring this lady back to Arizona territory against her will." He indicated Daisy. The lieutenant's shrewd gaze took in their trail-worn appearance and the protective way Cole stood beside Daisy. "This lady your wife, Mr. Davidson?" Cole hesitated. "Not yet, sir, but she will be once we reach California." Lieutenant Fletcher nodded thoughtfully. "Running from an arranged marriage, are we?" At their surprised expressions, he smiled slightly. "Seen it before. Territories full of old men with money thinking they can buy young wives." "Theodore Blackwell," Daisy said. "He was forcing me to marry him to settle my father's debts." Recognition flickered in the lieutenant's eyes. "Blackwell. Now there's a name I know. Man's got influence in the territory, but his reach doesn't extend to California, nor to military matters." He turned to his sergeant. "Set up camp here for the night. Post guards on the high ground in case those men decide to return." To the exhausted travelers, he added, "You'll be safe with us tonight. In the morning, we'll escort you to the territorial border. What happens after that is your business." The cavalry patrol made quick work of establishing a secure camp. Tents were erected, fires lit, and hot coffee soon bubbled in battered tin pots. The four fugitives sat wrapped in borrowed army blankets, the immensity of their narrow escape slowly sinking in. "How did you happen to be in the pass tonight, Lieutenant?" Cole asked as they sipped the strong, reviving coffee. Fletcher settled beside them, stretching his long legs toward the fire. "Regular patrol route, but I'll admit we were keeping an eye out for you folks. Got word from an old-timer named Harding that some innocent travelers might need assistance." "Tom Harding sent you?" Daisy asked in wonder. The lieutenant nodded. "He rode to our outpost yesterday, said Blackwell had hired guns hunting decent folk who'd done nothing wrong." He smiled slightly. "Harding and I go back. When he vouches for someone, I listen." Relief and gratitude washed through the group. They had allies they never knew existed, people willing to stand against power and wealth when it was misused. "What will happen to Harris and the others?" Caleb asked. Lieutenant Fletcher's expression hardened. "If we catch them in California, they'll face charges for firing on U.S. troops, but my guess is they're hightailing it back to Arizona territory right now." "And Blackwell?" Daisy asked softly. "Will he send others?" "He might try," Fletcher acknowledged. "But once you're legally married in California, his claims on you become much harder to enforce. And from what Harding told me, Blackwell's overextended himself buying up properties in Oro Blanco. He can't afford an extended campaign across state lines." The conversation continued late into the night, but eventually fatigue overtook them. The lieutenant showed them to a tent where they could rest, the first proper shelter they'd had since leaving Harding's line shack. As Daisy settled onto a bedroll beside Cole, his arm protectively around her, she felt the tight knot of fear that had lived in her chest since fleeing Oro Blanco finally begin to unravel. "We're going to make it," she whispered. Cole's lips brushed her forehead. "We already have." Morning brought clear skies and renewed determination. After a hearty breakfast of army rations, they prepared to complete the final leg of their journey. Lieutenant Fletcher provided them with fresh supplies and detailed directions to the nearest California settlement. "It's called Needles," he explained, pointing to a spot on his map. "Small place, but growing. Has a justice of the peace who can perform legal marriages." He looked meaningfully at Cole and Daisy, then at Caleb and Rachel. As promised, the cavalry escort accompanied them down the western slope of the mountains and across the flat desert terrain to the official territorial border, an invisible line marked only by a weathered wooden post. There, Lieutenant Fletcher reined in his horse. "This is as far as we go officially," he said. "Needles is about 15 miles west. You should reach it by nightfall if you push on." Cole extended his hand to the officer. "We can't thank you enough, Lieutenant." Fletcher clasped his hand firmly. "No thanks needed. Just treat your ladies right and make honest women of them quick." His eyes twinkled. "And if you ever tell the story of how you met, maybe leave out the part where the U.S. cavalry had to rescue you." With final farewells and promises to repay the kindness shown them, the four travelers crossed into California territory, free at last from Theodore Blackwell's reach. The small settlement of Needles welcomed them at sunset, a dusty collection of buildings clustered near the Colorado River. Its main street boasted a general store, a small hotel, a livery, and to their relief, the Office of Justice of the Peace Samuel Wilson. Judge Wilson, a portly man with spectacles and a kind face, listened to their story with interest. When they explained their desire for immediate marriage ceremonies, he readily agreed. "Not the first young couples to come seeking hasty weddings," he observed cheerfully. "Though usually they're not quite so trail-worn. The hotel has rooms where the ladies can freshen up, and my wife might have some appropriate dresses they could borrow." And so it was that, 2 hours later, Daisy stood beside Cole in the judge's small parlor, wearing a borrowed blue dress that had been hastily taken in at the waist. Her hair was arranged simply but neatly, adorned with a sprig of desert wildflowers the judge's wife had thoughtfully provided. On her finger gleamed Tom Harding's wife's wedding band, the perfect size, as though meant for her all along. Cole, freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt provided by the hotel keeper, had never looked more handsome to her eyes. His face was solemn as he repeated his vows, but his eyes danced with joy and certainty. "I, Cole Davidson, take you, Daisy Anderson, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said, his voice strong and sure. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death parts us." When it was her turn, Daisy's voice trembled slightly, but her words rang with conviction. "I, Daisy Anderson, take you, Cole Davidson, to be my lawfully wedded husband. To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death parts us." Judge Wilson beamed as he pronounced them husband and wife. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Davidson." Cole's kiss was tender and reverent, a promise of all the years to come. Behind them, Rachel dabbed at her eyes while Caleb watched with a broad smile, waiting their turn before the judge. That night, in a small but clean room at the Needles Hotel, Daisy became Cole's wife in truth. His touch was gentle, his love evident in every caress as they discovered each other fully for the first time. Afterward, lying in his arms as the desert night cooled around them, Daisy marveled at the journey that had brought them here. "4 days ago I was preparing to marry Theodore Blackwell," she murmured, tracing patterns on Cole's chest. "Now I'm Mrs. Cole Davidson, bound for Sonoma to start a new life." Cole's arms tightened around her. "Any regrets?" She raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes. "Only that we didn't find each other sooner." The next morning, after Caleb and Rachel had their own simple ceremony, the newly wedded couples purchased supplies for the final leg of their journey. The small settlement didn't offer much, but they acquired enough to see them through to more populated areas. They set out together, 4 people who had been strangers days before, but were now bound by shared experience and mutual respect. Their route would take them north and west, following the Colorado River for a time before cutting across the desert to the fertile valleys of central California. The journey was not without hardship. They endured scorching days and cold nights, dust storms that forced them to seek shelter, and a close encounter with a small band of raiders that left Caleb with a minor bullet wound to his arm. But compared to the dangers they had already survived, these challenges seemed manageable. 2 weeks after leaving Needles, they reached the outskirts of San Bernardino. There, in the growing settlement that marked the true beginning of civilization in California, Caleb and Rachel decided to stay. Rachel's aunt lives just outside town, Caleb explained as they shared a farewell meal. Says there's work for both of us if we want it. Her husband runs a freight business, needs reliable drivers. Cole nodded understanding. It's a good opportunity. He extended his hand to the younger man. You saved our lives back in Apache Pass. I won't forget it. We saved each other, Caleb corrected, clasping Cole's hand firmly. That's what family does. The word hung in the air between them. Family. 4 people thrown together by circumstance, bound now by something deeper than shared danger. We'll write when we're settled in Sonoma, Daisy promised, embracing Rachel warmly. Perhaps you can visit once we have a proper home. I'd like that, Rachel said, smiling through her tears. We have a wedding present for you. She nodded to Caleb, who produced a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside, Daisy found a beautifully crafted leather-bound journal. For recording your new beginning, Rachel explained. Every good story deserves to be written down. The farewell was bittersweet, but both couples had their own paths to follow now. Cole and Daisy continued northward, traveling through the fertile San Joaquin Valley, where vast wheat fields stretched to the horizon. The landscape gradually changed brown, giving way to green, desert scrub, yielding to oak-covered hills. And then, one golden afternoon in late June, they crested a rise and looked down upon the Sonoma Valley for the first time. Vineyards and orchards spread across the valley floor, interspersed with neat farms and patches of native oak woodland. In the distance, a ribbon of silver marked the path of a creek, and beyond that, the faint blue line of the Pacific Ocean shimmered on the horizon. It's beautiful, Daisy breathed, reining in her mare beside Cole. Even more than you described. Cole nodded, his own gaze drinking in the peaceful scene. Ethan's place should be about 5 miles ahead, near that stand of tall oaks. They rode down into the valley, passing prosperous farms where men and women paused in their work to wave friendly greetings. Children played in yards, chickens scratched in gardens, and the air carried the sweet scent of ripening fruit instead of desert dust. Ethan Davidson's farm proved easy to find, a neat property bordered by a whitewashed fence, with a tidy farmhouse nestled among mature fruit trees. A man who could only be Cole's cousin emerged from the barn as they approached, his weathered face breaking into a wide smile of welcome. Cole Davidson, as I live and breathe, he called, striding forward to meet them. When I got your letter saying you were actually coming, I hardly dared believe it. The men embraced warmly, years of separation falling away in an instant. Then Ethan turned curious eyes to Daisy. And this must be your bride, he said, tipping his hat respectfully. Madam, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Sonoma. Thank you, Mr. Davidson, Daisy replied warmly. Your valley is everything Cole promised and more. Ethan, please, he insisted. We're family now. He gestured toward the house. Come in, come in. Martha will have my hide if I keep you standing in the yard like strangers. Martha Davidson proved to be a plump, cheerful woman who welcomed them with genuine warmth and a table laden with home-cooked food. Their two young children, a boy of 6 and a girl of 4, regarded the newcomers with shy curiosity, until Cole produced small carved wooden animals from his saddlebag, earning their immediate friendship. That evening, after the children were in bed, the adults sat on the wide front porch, enjoying the cool evening air and catching up on years of family news. Ethan confirmed that the adjacent parcel he'd written Cole about was still available. 160 acres, good water rights, enough cleared land to start farming right away, he described. Previous owner had to return east when his wife took ill, willing to sell at a fair price. I've been saving, Cole said, but I'm not sure it's enough for that much land. Ethan waved away his concern. Bank in town knows me. They'll extend credit on my say-so, and you can work with me until your own place is producing. As the conversation continued, making plans and discussing possibilities, Daisy felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. This was where they belonged, this fertile valley with its promise of new beginnings. Later that night, lying beside Cole in the comfortable guest bedroom, she whispered, "I think I'm going to love it here." His arms tightened around her. "We'll build something good, Daisy, something that's ours." And they did. The years that followed brought both joys and hardships, as all lives do. They purchased the adjacent land and built a modest home with their own hands. Cole's knowledge of horses and cattle served them well, while Daisy discovered a talent for growing the region's specialty crops, particularly the wine grapes that were beginning to make Sonoma famous. Their first child, a son they named Thomas in honor of Tom Harding, arrived in the spring of their second year in California. A daughter, Ellen, followed 18 months later, bearing the name of Harding's late wife, whose wedding ring still adorned Daisy's finger. They maintained correspondence with Caleb and Rachel, who had established themselves successfully in San Bernardino. Occasional letters also arrived from Lieutenant Fletcher, who had been promoted to captain and transferred to San Francisco. And once, unexpectedly, a package came from Oro Blanco, a small chest containing Daisy's mother's jewelry, and a note asking forgiveness for choices made under duress. Daisy wrote back, extending forgiveness and an invitation to visit their California home. Her parents never came, too rooted in their Arizona life, but the exchange healed wounds that might otherwise have festered. As for Theodore Blackwell, they heard that his empire had indeed overextended itself, collapsing during the financial panic of 1893. The man himself died shortly thereafter, leaving no one to mourn him, a fate Daisy considered more tragic than any physical punishment could have been. 10 years after their flight from Oro Blanco, on a warm September evening, Cole and Daisy sat on the porch of their expanded farmhouse, watching their children play in the yard while the sun set over their flourishing vineyards. Their third child, a 2-year-old boy named Michael, slept peacefully in Daisy's arms. "You ever think about it?" Cole asked quietly. "How different our lives might have been if I hadn't come to your window that day?" Daisy looked at him, the laugh lines now etched around his eyes, the few strands of silver beginning to appear at his temples, the same steadfast character that had given her courage to flee a loveless future. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I look at all we've built together, and I can only be grateful you found the courage to say those words." Cole smiled, taking her free hand in his. The arranged marriage was set for that evening. "A cowboy found her and said we can leave right now," he quoted softly. "Best thing I ever said in my life." "And the best choice I ever made was to listen," Daisy replied, leaning her head against his shoulder as their children's laughter floated on the golden evening air, the sweetest sound of freedom, of love freely chosen, of a journey that had brought them exactly where they were meant to be.